First thing is that Serenity actually is the one who gave Sailor Moon the heart brooch and the spiral heart moon rod thing, the new scepter. The QD moon rod and the star brooch had shattered during the final battle with Nemesis. In the anime, Sagi and Mamoru's true love created the new brooch and wand, and I wish I was making that up, but it's like the cheesiest thing that somehow also manages to be really cute. The manga also immediately put Chibiusa back into the game at the end of that last story arc. She comes back and is like, I'm a Sailor Senshi now, so I get to train with you guys, it'll be awesome, right? Also, she has Diana with her instead of Luna P, which is nice, because it adds more cuteness factor to it. In the anime, she returned home at the end of the R season, and she didn't come back until like episode 90, 88, something like that. It was a couple episodes down the road, and then she was back, and she was not 6 years old anymore, she was 12. It's generally assumed that like the magic that kept her a small child in the manga doesn't exist in the anime. So in the anime she's not 902 years old, she's actually like 6 years old, and then she comes back 6 years later, her time, and you know, like 2 months later their time. Another big difference is what the Death Busters were actually after. In the manga, they took people's souls, and in the anime, they were searching for the pure heart crystals so they could uncover the talismans and then use that to get the Holy Grail and revive Pharaoh 90 and Mistress 9. Ah yes, the talismans! In the manga, the Outer Senshi already had their talismans. Michiru actually used her mirror quite often in her civilian form, and Haruka, while she couldn't exactly wave her sword around in public, she used it in battle, and then Pluto's was her staff, so, you know, we already knew she had that one. And the talismans weren't actually needed to summon the Holy Grail in the manga. At one point, Sailor Moon, Tuxedo Common, and Chibiusa's hearts all resonated in unison and whatnot, and then the Holy Grail appeared, and then she was able to use it to power up into Super Sailor Moon. The Grail also draws on the power of all of the Sailor Senshi, as long as they're together, and without that, Sailor Moon can't upgrade. Later on in the arc, Sailor Chibi Moon also gains her own Grail, so that's something that also didn't happen in the anime. She never got her own Grail. She did at one point, when the Grail appeared, get little extra hair thingies, but that's about it. Hotaru was actually a cyborg in the manga, taking the role that Amy was originally supposed to hold. In both versions, her body is under possession by Mistress 9, but in the anime, the lab accident that caused her father to go into making her a cyborg in the manga instead resulted in her being killed, and then her father bargained for her life with Pharaoh 90, and then she just was like, here, I'm gonna put this soul in here, and we'll deal with that later. Her awakening in the anime was actually much of her own doing. She was fighting for her life, and she just was like, hey, bam, I'm gonna get you out of my body, and I'm gonna be the kick-ass sailor soldier that I'm supposed to be. The talismans actually revived her in the manga, bringing about the end of the world, which Sailor Moon then had to jump into a hell pit to reverse. Really, Saturn was much more benevolent in the anime. She actually went in to fight Pharaoh 90 alone, so nobody else would have to die, and then Sailor Moon rushed in after her and saved her from being completely killed, and instead let her be reborn into a baby. Professor Tomo didn't die in the anime, which did lead to some awkward, hey, I'm just gonna kidnap your daughter and you're never gonna see her again awkwardness that happened in later seasons. Speaking of Sailor Pluto, she just dies at one point in a fiery helicopter explosion. She stopped time so Uranus and Neptune could actually get out of the helicopter before it exploded, and then it did, and she's dead. Except she comes back in Super S movie and then in Stars with no reasonable explanation as to why she's alive. At least in the manga, when Sailor Pluto returns, it's explained that she was reincarnated by Serenity to be in the past and like fight with everybody instead of having a solitary post in the gates of time. And we'll talk about a couple other things, but I'm gonna save that for the character analysis later. So this season of the anime is hella fluffy and mostly revolves around Chibiusa, and it's very interesting for how starkly contrasted the differences are. I also have a little bit of a problem with how heavily the anime relies on Pegasus being the deus ex machina every time. The manga actually starts off with Chibiusa trying to go back to the future because she thinks her training is complete. In the anime, there is no mention of her going home whatsoever. We also see that Mamoru is actually being affected by something in both versions, but in the manga, he's like actually hospitalized at one point because he's coughing up all this black blood. In the anime, it's just like, I'm just not feeling well, it's okay. The anime actually had Mistress 9 stealing the Holy Grail at the end of the last season, which is why Sailor Moon cannot upgrade to Super Sailor Moon. She was able to in the last minute just because she drew on the power of all of her friends, but since all the outer senshi are just gone this season with no explanation, just not there anymore, she can't exactly rely on that. In comes Pegasus, who Chibiusa has befriended to this point, and says, here, take all of my magical glowy horn powers and you can become Super Sailor Moon and Super Sailor Chibi Moon. He does power them up in the manga as well, but that's just because the Holy Grail will not work without all of the senshi present, and so far the outer senshi are just off raising Hotaru. Mamoru's affliction is eventually revealed to be that the Earth is dying, and because he is the Prince of the Earth, he is also going to die with it unless somebody stops the Dead Moon Circus. And he's told that the Earth's golden crystal can fix this. The manga showed that Mamoru actually carried the golden crystal within him at all times, just like Sailor Moon has a silver crystal, and in the anime, the golden crystal is just Pegasus's horn. What really makes me mad about this is that it totally destroys Mamoru's agency as someone who is equal to fight with all the girls and like save the planet, considering he just had this whole story arc in the manga of, I'm not worthy enough, I'm not good enough to be your boyfriend because you're so awesome and I'm not awesome at all, and angst, 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 I'm dying by the way, angst. In both versions of this arc, the senshi also gain their super status. The manga has them being affected by the Amazoness Quartet, who are actually like the main villains of this arc. Instead of the Amazon trio, they're actually the Amazoness Quartet's pets. To gain their superpowers, they have to overcome all their fears and embrace the fact that they can try to achieve their own dreams while collectively going for the shared dream that everybody has of creating a perfect future for everyone. And again, in the anime, Pegasus just gives them the power-up, which is kind of lame. And the outers don't even get their power-ups until the Star season. At least Hotaru gives them their status both times. The manga also dedicates an entire chapter dedicated to flashing back to the Silver Millennium and explaining why the Dead Moon Circus came into being. It's kind of very Sleeping Beauty, and we also see that Queen Serenity was not actually born on this planet. She was from somewhere else in the galaxy. That's kind of expanded on a little bit later in Stars, but it's very, very interesting to think about, and it wasn't explored as thoroughly as it could have been. We also see how Nehelenia got corrupted in the anime as well, but it was just kind of a, you're gonna grow old and ugly someday, and she was like, no, I don't want that. And they were like, okay, so take everybody's dreams and stay young and beautiful forever. And that's not nearly as cool. In the manga, there's this epic final battle where everybody gets to be in princess dresses, and they're all fighting and powering up to their eternal forms, and Chibiusa actually gets her own pink moon crystal, and then it's like this big crazy thing, and Sailor Quartet appears, and they're gonna be Sailor Chibi Moon's guardian someday, and it's all like, yeah, woo, this is awesome! And the anime kind of falls flat in the 4th season finale, where everybody's magical dream power is enough to just knock the Dead Moon Circus off kilter enough that Nehelenia decides to seal herself away in the mirror again. Except, first she has to throw Chibiusa 30,000 feet in the air off of a building, and then Sailor Moon dives on after her, and then using the power of Pegasus again, saves her at the last minute, and then they say goodbye to everybody, and the Amazoness Quartet is off in the distance with the hazy promise of someday we'll see them again, and that's how that season ends. So the anime actually picks up right where Super's left off, and we actually see everybody getting possessed by these mirror shards, and we think, oh, what's going on now? And it's actually Nehelenia again, except Galaxia was like, maybe you should kill everybody, and she was like, maybe I should. So after some fumbling around, Sailor Moon finally gains her eternal form, and nobody else does. I will be eternally bitter about that. Actually, the best bit of this whole wrap-up, which is about 6 episodes long, is that all the senshi get separated when they're going to find Mamoru and Chibiusa, and everybody gets paired off in ways that we've never really seen one-on-one interaction before. So Mars is with Neptune, Venus and Pluto are together, Mercury and Uranus, and then Jupiter and Saturn, and it's like great. Like there's some interaction between Mars and Neptune. That's just awesome to see these two beauty queens like kind of like snarking at each other, and then at one point Uranus is like, we need to fight, and Mercury is like, we need to find a weakness, hang on a second, and Uranus is like, stop holding me back, and she's like, no, hit there, and then they're like, oh yeah, we work awesome as a team together, high fives. Oh, and at one point Usagi is like trapped in this fever dream, and there's some talking flowers, and eventually after Chibiusa dies in a puff of sparkles because Mamoru is like almost dead himself, everybody is able to give Sailor Moon all of their powers, and she achieves the eternal form forever and defeats all the evil, and yay! Oh, and Chibiusa comes back to life. And she's never seen again on screen after this episode. They mention her in the next episode, and they're like, oh yeah, she went off to the future, and I'm like, but we just had this big thing where we tried to send her back at the beginning of this season, and now we're just gonna see ya, bye, off screen, bye. And now with the anime finally caught up with the manga, and they are for real because now the girls are finally in high school, whereas they started high school back at the beginning of the dream arc. So aside from the main villain and the general story arc, these are two completely different stories. In the manga, the girls and Mamoru are just dead in the first 5 story acts, and they're all killed basically right in front of Usagi, and it's like this emotionally devastating thing. She represses all of her memories, and she's kind of like this comatose, I can't talk about it kind of thing for a little while until Seiya reveals like, no, your friends are dead. It's okay, you can bring them back. It's just, you know, you need to stop being like this. So eventually she flies on angel wings, and they're real in the manga as compared to the plastic things she has in the anime. She flies off into the center of the galaxy to fight the reanimated corpses of her friends, as well as all of the other senshi in the entire galaxy who have been kidnapped and brainwashed by Galaxia. At one point she's saved by Chibi Moon and the Sailor Quartet, who have come back from the future to help her stop making things crazy in the future, and she manages to redeem Galaxia just slightly before Galaxia dies, and then Sailor Moon throws herself into the cosmic reset button and manages to reanimate everybody, and everything's great, and then they end on a happy note of Usagi and Mamoru getting married. Meanwhile, the anime takes place entirely on Earth. The Outers feature very lightly until like the last 12 episodes. Nobody dies until like the last 12 episodes. And like I said, we never see Chibiusa again. No, she's just gone back to the future. No more. The story largely focuses on Seiya's unrequited love for Usagi, who is really sad because Mamoru went to school in America and hasn't written to her, but he's actually dead and she just doesn't know it. Also, everybody goes to a lot of Starlight's concerts. A lot of concerts. You get very sick of hearing that song after a while. And Galaxia is sending her lackeys out to find sailor crystals instead of just kind of knowing where they are and killing them. Oh, and Galaxia's headquarters, instead of being in a palace in the center of the galaxy, is in a TV station that is transdimensional? Oh, and instead of being girls disguised as dudes, the Starlights are dudes who turn into girls. So if you're wondering if I have missed a couple of things, don't worry, we're gonna get to them in the character arc. It's gonna start next week. So I'll see you then. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.